so-called the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room that we were talking about was the occupation, and which we defined as in the West Bank as a regime of apartheid. Now, the reason we did it at the time was that, as you remember, there were vast protests in Israel at the time against the Netanyahu government's attempt to so-called overhaul the judicial system, which was really an attempt to undermine the rule of law in Israel, to strengthen the executive and weaken the judiciary, which is the only control over the executive in Israel, with the goal of extending the occupation regime in the West Bank, and finally of annexing that area and making life impossible for the Palestinian population there. There are over 500,000 Jewish settlers there and somewhere around 3 million Palestinians living there. Now, what do we mean by apartheid? First of all, people tend to think of apartheid as what happened in South Africa, and the term comes from there. But there is, in fact, a UN resolution on apartheid that defines what apartheid is. And curiously, all the elements of that are mentioned in that resolution exist also in the West Bank. The most important of which is that you have two populations in the West Bank, Jews and Palestinians. The Jews, the settlers, are extraterritorial Israeli citizens. They live under Israeli law, or some kind of figment that creates them as living under Israeli law. They can vote to the Israeli parliament. They enjoy all the rights of democracy the Jews in Israel enjoy. The Palestinians there live under a completely different set of laws, which give them almost no rights at all. That is, they live under a military regime. They're tried before military courts, where the judges are lawyers on reserve service, Israeli lawyers on reserve service. One can detain them endlessly in prison. And so these are two groups that live under totally different laws. They're also separated from each other by a set of roads, roadblocks, checkposts that make life increasingly difficult for Palestinians and make life much better for the Jewish population there. So from that point of view, there's clearly an apartheid regime in the West Bank, and that has in many ways filtered into Israel. That is, generation after generation of young Israeli men and women are called up and go to serve as policemen in the West Bank in military uniform. Most of what they do is police the population. And that has a corrupting impact on more and more generations of Israelis who get used to the idea that they can break into homes at 4 a.m, arrest whoever they like. And so that effect is not only that we have an apartheid regime, but we have a corruption of democracy in Israel itself, which ultimately resulted in this attempt by Netanyahu's regime to change the very system of democracy in Israel, which was really only for Jews in the first place.